And here we go.
And welcome my fellow film fiends. As you can tell, I'm still riding my Spider-Man high. And it's been a few days now. I think I gave it enough time to soak and really take in what I saw. And I think it's about time that I gave it a proper landing spot in the live action Spider-Mans. With a little twist, because at the end I'm going to also rank all three Spider-Mans, Andrew, Tobey, and Tom as well. So, got a nice little video for you. And with that being said, let's just get straight to it. And at number 8, I have Spider-Man 3. Raimi Spider-Man 3. And where can I start? The biggest reason that it's dead last for me is because this film to me did a disservice to the Peter Parker Spider-Man character. Alright, so let me explain what I meant by that and why I have one film from one of the goated trilogies in the bottom. And the reasoning is pretty simple. Because in Spider-Man 3, he gets a suit. He starts acting erratic and not like himself, correct? Wrong. He started that way before he got the black suit on. And he was acting out of character. From the beginning shot when he's showboating, I'm like, that's so unlike Spider-Man. You just completely took away from what this character was. And also the tone of the movie was very comic book-y, but in all the wrong way with a lot of camps. Plus adding all the other BS from Spider-Man 3, which it's been said throughout the years. There's no need for me bringing it up. So on to number 7, to nobody's surprise, if it's not last on everybody's list, it's pretty close. And that's The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And what more can I say about this film that hasn't been said already? Well, I'll just start off with the obvious, like 3 villains, and all 3 of them were straight garbage. Electro, which now redeemed himself, but if we're judging this film by itself, was horrible. You had Hobgoblin, I don't even want to get to that. And also, let's not forget, we had Rhino. Let that soak in. Ooh, yeah. Anyways, I think I spent enough time on this film. It's, besides an updated suit and Andrew Garfield, which was phenomenal as Spider-Man, and this film is, yeah, he couldn't do much to save it. Him in the relationship with him and Gwen Stacy was pretty, probably one of my favorite romances in all of the comic book genre. So they had that going for him, but the movie as a whole was pretty terrible. And at the number 6 spot, right above number 7, I have, this was tough because 6 and 5, any given day I can switch them out because they're pretty close in ranking for me. But number 6, I have another Andrew Garfield film, and that's Amazing Spider-Man 1. And why it's number 6 and not higher, it's a bunch of things. It was a shock coming from Sam Raimi's OG trilogy to this film, which I believe is the start, or it mirrors a lot of the MCU type of humor and stuff like that, because it's very campy and heavy on the jokes at times. And also, they had a lackluster villain. Lizard, still to this day, even with what they did in No Way Home, my liking for him did not go up whatsoever. And also, I felt once Andrew's Peter got bitten by the spider and he started getting his powers in that train, that whole train scene was a mess. Unrealistic, campy, yeah, mess. But once again, he did a great job as Spider-Man, and yeah, I take that into consideration. And especially when I give you my ranking of my favorite, Peter Parker Spider-Man and all that good stuff. So number 5, it's Far From Home. It's my least favorite from the trilogy of Tom Holland, as you can see, because I have it at number 5. And why it's so low, I think it's pretty simple. You have Spider-Man doing all these irrational decisions. And the biggest gripe for me is the fact that he didn't really fight anybody. And what I mean by that, he fought illusions. and he fought drones throughout the whole film. He didn't have that toe-to-toe with the villain, and then the barf aspect. The first two films of this Spider-Man's trilogy relied heavily on Iron Man, and I gotta dodge some points for that. It's you gotta be able to stand on your own 2 feet, especially if you're Spider-Man and you're holding that title. But what also gives it like a shining that makes it able to shine above the other films that I gave it is Jake Gyllenhaal. His performance, minus the barf thing again, he was Jake Gyllenhaal. He's a world-class actor, and it was shown here. He definitely outclassed everybody he acted with, including Tom Holland. So, at number 5, that's Far From Home. At number 4, I say 4 and on. I pretty much like every single film 4 and on. Number 4 is another Tom Holland film, Homecoming. I think this film gets a lot of unjust hate, which I don't really, I somewhat understand it because it's a polar opposite than the other Spider-Mans. But I felt like this is more of a coming of age story. And also this film was just so fun. I really enjoyed it, and it really had and has one of my favorite Spider-Man moments today. I think you've heard it from everybody. The rubble scene when he's caught under it and he has to psych himself up and, encourage himself and let him know that he's Spider-Man. That, he's pretty much deserves it, because this comes after he got stripped of his suit from Iron Man because he was acting like a child, which is what he was these first 2 films for sure. And another thing, Vulture was fantastic. He was an amazing villain. They use Vulture the right way. You don't expect Vulture and him to go toe to toe, fist to fist and stuff like that. Yeah, so Homecoming is definitely number 4, and I loved the inclusion of Iron Man in this film. Made sense, and he wasn't overbearing. So definitely number 4, I have Homecoming. Now my top 3. This is where it gets good, and obviously No Way Home is still in the rankings. I love that film that much, but it's not number 3. Number 3, Spider-Man 1. You might be thinking I'm crazy right now. I know, I'm sorry. But the reason why it's not higher, and it was higher a week ago, obviously, before this film came out, it's because some of the moments don't hit for me. I'm not a big, camp. I know some people love camp in their film. Me, particularly, I don't. And this film was extremely campy at times and a little over the top, especially with Willem Dafoe in certain aspects. But with that being said, he also cranked it up a notch and was menacing, evil, and honestly gave one of my favorite comic book villain performances, including the camp. And it's our first look at Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, and he embodied the Peter Parker persona to a T, to the point that no other Spider-Man, Andrew or Tom, has come close to his Peter Parker. His Spider-Man, that's debatable. But yeah, besides that, this film is I really enjoyed this film, but just a little too heavy on the camp and the hyper comic book aspects that I could have done without. So my top 2. Is it an upset? Did No Way Home make it to number 1 for me? Not quite. Number 2, I have No Way Home. And I don't know what I can say about this film that has not been said. I felt like all the camp issues that I had with Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin in this film, it was all the best parts of that. Mind you, I would have loved a little more of him. That's just me being greedy, but I feel like this is a Spider-Man film that has no business being made. And what I mean by that, you listen to this concept, you watch it play out, and in your mind, in my mind, it feels like something you'd see on YouTube or YouTube fan-made type film. You would never think a big budget studio will come up with this concept, and they did. Like I said, nostalgia at its finest, fan service at its finest, in a real challenging arc for Tom Holland's Peter Parker, Spider-Man. And This film was fantastic from every angle. I can't wait to watch it again to make sure that my ranking is correct. But as of right now, the number 2 spot, it's exactly where it needs to be, because it's also giving me all the villains that I love in here, especially for my number 1 film, which is, to nobody's surprise, is Spider-Man 2. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2. And this film is golden. It's one of the best comic book movies known to man, and I don't even think you could argue that case at this point. Doc Ock's performance was just, it was complex. He's not just your typical, oh, I want to be bad just to be bad. He had a reasoning for why he was doing everything he was doing. And the tone of this film, so grounded, but yet infused with all the right comic book aspects. And I love the beginning of this film when they showed you, because a lot of Spider-Man 1 is, he's new to this, but at Spider-Man 2 you see the consequences of him picking up the Spider-Man mantle. And this film is done to perfection. It's one of my favorite comic book movies, genre films to date. If The Dark Knight did not exist, this film might be number 1 for me. I'll just say that. And now, as promised, I'm going to go ahead and rank all 3 Spider-Mans. Tom Holland's, Tobey Maguire's, Andrew Garfield. And let's get it out of the way. Number 3 is Tom Holland, to nobody's surprise. As far as portrayal as Peter Parker and Spider-Man, there's a lot left to be desired. I'll just leave it at that. In comparison to the other 2, he doesn't come close in either regard. He's not my favorite Peter Parker. He's not my favorite Spider-Man. So that means he's number 3. The first 2 films could have been handled a lot better, even though now I kind of see where they're going with after watching this 3rd film. But still, that doesn't excuse what I saw in the first 2 films. So that's why he's number 3. Number 2, believe it or not, is tougher than you think. You would automatically think, oh, number 1 is Tobey Maguire. Yeah, he's number 1. And number 2 is Andrew Garfield. The reasoning, though it's tough, is because, in my opinion, Andrew Garfield, and I believe other people as well, is the best Spider-Man, hands down. Especially rewatching the films before this film came out, No Way Home. Wow. He embodies the Spider-Man character to the T. The way his mannerisms are, the way he cracked jokes, sarcasticness, even the look of him with those big eyes, the costume, particularly in the second one. Oh my God, this is Spider-Man done to perfection. But his Peter Parker, it's an updated portrayal of Peter Parker, and honestly, I could have done with a more, typical Peter Parker. So that's why I have to give number 1 to Tobey Maguire, because his Peter Parker is the Peter Parker I loved and known, and also his Spider-Man is still a pretty damn good Spider-Man. It's not like his Spider-Man is lacking. It's just that Andrew's Spider-Man is that good, but Tobey's Spider-Man is pretty damn good himself. So the combination of those 2 makes Tobey Maguire my favorite Spider-Man, hands down. And that's not including the quality of his films, which, like you saw in my ranking. But yeah, so Tobey Maguire 1, to nobody's surprise, Andrew Garfield 2, and Tom Holland 3. And I'm pretty sure that's probably 90% of everybody's ranking as far as Spider-Mans go. So there you have it. My ranking of all the 8 live action Spider-Man films, and my ranking of the 3 Spider-Mans. Man, I hope you enjoyed this video. And like I said, I promise I'll be cranking up more videos. So please continue to watch. I'm trying, man. I'm trying. So this is a little new, just a little new for me. But yeah, till next time, we out.